The Jet Sweep Show with your co-host Will "It's Harris Time" Harris and Josh "Smoky Hell" NFL Nelson. Strap in, folks. You are cleared for flight in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Good evening, Monday Night Football fans. Thanks for boarding the Jet Sweep Show. You've got myself, It's Harris Time, and my co-host, Josh "Smoky Hell" Nelson, coming at you live from the Great White North. And if you're the first time joining us on the Jet Sweep Show, we're going to go through a whole list of all the hottest news that came at you this action-packed NFL weekend, and then get you back for halftime. That's our goal every single Sunday. Get you in up to speed, up to gear on what has happened this weekend, get you set for the week ahead in fantasy, and then get you back for the second half. Hey, Smokey, it's great to be back, man. How the hell are you?
Woo! We finally escaped the basement. We're back. They let us back on the air. And brother, I could not be more excited to be back here chopping it up with my boy Will Harris. And I don't know about you, but it's been a roller coaster of emotions this weekend, we'll say. So much mayhem, but we're going to get into that, man. First of all, how's your life? How are you living, man?
I'm doing great, Smokey. It's even better now that we're here jamming together on Monday night once again. So make sure that everybody tunes in every Monday night at halftime. And again, get up to speed on the weekend's events and get you ready for the week ahead in fantasy football. So Smoke, I mean, the 1 o'clock slate was a tough one to slog through, but certainly a lot of action in that late slate. And then we finished it off with a amazing finish with that KC Baltimore game.
Damn, man. Lamar finally got him. Oh,
I know.
Things
man.
I love to see.
It's great too. And your boy Marquise Brown, Hollywood was all
Hollywood, yeah.
He's been all showtime for the first 2 weeks of the NFL season. It looks like he is the target to have in Baltimore, which is really cool to see. So the folks that are just joining us and those that are joining us for a second season, thank you. We appreciate that. We're going to go through the weekend's events little segment called the Black Box. So looking back on what's happened, what's going on, news items that you need to be aware of. This week, we're also going to do a little pretender contender with the undefeated teams currently in the NFL. We've got 7 of those, and look at a couple of players from each team and if they are contenders on your fantasy football team or if they're pretending. And then we're going to get Smokey to run us through the QB apocalypse that also transpired this weekend. And we're going to wrap it up with a little waiver wire segment that we took over from Smokey last year called Puff Puff Pass, where we're going to puff on 2 players that we're going to be targeting on waivers, and then one that we can say pass to. So Smoke, I'm going to throw it over to you to give us the rundown of the Black Box, my friend.
All right. So the information you need to know, this is the essentials. And in addition to a slew of early Sunday morning quarterback injuries that all coalesced around the same time, which we will touch on later, fantasy gamers were also treated to a bonus round of mayhem, befalling the likes of it Deontay Johnson, Darrell Henderson, Mike Evans, Elijah Mitchell, JaMychal Hasty, Trey Sermon. What the fuck is going on in San Francisco, man? Like, whoo, bubble wrap. 2 words, 1 solution. And Jarvis Landry too, man, that's a killer on a lot of my rosters. He was like that.
The Iron Man.
Yeah, Mr. Dependable. And oof, there's probably more, but I couldn't see through the tears to write many more names down. So I don't know. I feel like this is more than usual, but I feel we collectively also block out these traumas by the time playoffs roll around. And it just seems like a fresh batch of hell every time we're reminded of the fragility of humans. That's the information you need there. Like, there's a lot of injuries. If you are in multiple leagues, like, I don't know if y'all are degenerates out there like myself, like my co-host Will here. all these injuries means there's going to be some Swiss cheese looking rosters out there. So you need to
Yeah.
get ahead on these things. Will, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and it just really shows the fragility of the running back position. You look at this, think about this scenario for a second there, Smoke. Imagine if you, in your great foresight, wanted a piece of the San Francisco running game. So you went ahead and drafted Raheem Mostert in, let's say, the sixth or seventh round. Rest in peace, Father Raheem, week one. And then you went all in on Elijah Mitchell's performance in week one. And he is out with a stinger injury, which I believe is associated with your shoulder. They're not sure of the serious of that, but he could potentially be out for week 3 as well. There's no confirmation yet. For dynasty leaguers as well, for that we were drafting Trey Sermon in the first round. We didn't really get to see much of him we got to see 0 of him in week 1 for what I heard was a missed curfew call with him and Mr. Ayuk.
Yeah.
And then in week 2, once Mitchell went down and Jermichael Hasty also got banged up, he got a concussion on his second touch or his first touch of the game. So
Second,
the
I believe,
fragility of the running back position, I don't think has ever been more acute. You think about the situation in LA. We were all extreme. Look at the situations in LA and Baltimore, right? Where we were extremely high on Akers and in Dobbins. And it's just been, especially with the Ravens, looks like they've got a guy in Williams that they can run with. But you got to stock up on these backs. Make sure that you're active on the waiver wire, because it's going to get really, really thin. It looks like Sony Michel might be the real deal in LA. So for those that were getting him late in drafts, you've got a good cuff there to Henderson. We're going to talk a little bit more about Henderson later on, because he was looking damn good too before he went down.
Yeah, he was. I got to give credit where credit's due, man. And that's a position you want to attack, man. LA loves to use their backs in the goal line. And if they're getting that work, that's value, man. That is value in fantasy football. You want those goal line touches.
The goal line touches and those valuable targets too. Henderson's had 4 through 2 games, those valuable PPR. We know that Michel, what's interesting about Michel is that he was a pass catching back, right? From his college days. So maybe they'll utilize him in the Hendo role, but Hendo was also seeing those goal line touches. So it's going to be interesting how things shake out there in Los Angeles. And one of our contenders are pretenders. So why don't we get started with the AFC, where there's 2 undefeated teams who happen to both be in the same division. What are the chances? So we've got 2 undefeated teams in the Raiders and the Broncos in the AFC. And then in the
Can
NFC,
we just stop for 1 second? I hate to cut you off there. I'm going to let you finish. But if I told you there was 2 undefeated teams in this division before the season started 2 weeks in, would you guess that it was the Broncos and the Raiders? The Broncos, I could guess. Absolutely. I mean, come on, look who they faced the first 2 weeks. But the Broncos, yeah. Anyways, continue, man. Continue.
No chance that we're guessing the Raiders there, and we'll get into them in a bit. And then we've got 5 teams in the NFC to break down. So let's get right into it, and let's kick it off with maybe not so surprising, looking at their schedule, with the Giants up first. They won 27-13, the Broncos did, and then 23-13 versus the Jaguars, the Urban Meyer led Jaguars with Trevor Lawrence. What are you thinking so far on this? Poor Visca, man. He's
Poor
dying.
Everyone, get Urban the hell out of there, man.
Take the USC job. Take the USC job, dude. So, as a team, contender or pretender?
The Broncos? My call preseason with these guys was that Teddy needs to win this job. They need some stability at quarterback that can feed these pieces. There's such a great, when they were all healthy, there was such a great cast of offensive skill pieces here. And even though they're down Judy, they've still got a lot of good skill position pieces here. And you couple that with their defense, these guys are for real. They are contenders. For me, I don't know if they're contending for the AFC. They're definitely contending for the division. I I think they're more contender than the next team that we be diving into.
Yeah, absolutely. And when they get that run game dialed in with Javonte Williams and a great
Mhm.
pretender in Melvin Gordon right now, whose stats are being pumped up by that 80-yard touchdown run that he took to the house week one, I think that they're going to be a contending force in the AFC. And a contender for me from this team has got to be Cortland Sutton. He was just an absolute fine form. Coming back from that knee injury, he did see some targets in week one, but really without Judy, he was the guy. 12 targets, 9 receptions for 159 yards. So we can expect more of Cortland Sutton to be on your contending rosters going forward. So I think we agree Denver, a contender in the AFC. And let's switch it over to the Las Vegas Raiders, who I must give Chucky, John Gruden credit here for the first 2 weeks. He's gotten this team up to play with a gutty Monday Night Football win against the Raiders, 33-27, just an absolute show. And then against my Steelers, 26-17, again, a gutty win. It's been really
Yeah.
interesting to watch this team go to the pass. Especially with Jacobs banged up, they haven't had that strong running game, and Carr has taken it to the air. And dude, man, he's thrown some nice passes, and he has looked about as damn good as Derek Carr can look. My question to you, though, contenders or pretenders?
Oh, like I alluded to in the last answer, man, they are pretenders for me. There is only so far that they are going to get feeding Darren Waller this many targets a game. Like, eventually, someone's going to be able to stop him, and then what are you going to do?
Yeah,
What's your plan after that? You gonna run out Jacobs, who can't seem to stay on the field? You gonna run out Drake as your bell cow running back? I don't think that's happening either, man. There's a reason that this guy has not stayed more than a couple years on any of these teams.
yeah,
He was a good piece, but like, look at all the moves that they've been making over the last year. How many different running backs they've brought into this system? It's like they've
yeah.
shown zero confidence in Jacobs. I don't think they're contenders, man. I think these guys are straight up pretenders.
Yeah, I feel that it's like Rudy, he's just playing over his head, and I think that they're going to come back down to earth. But I salute them for fantasy purposes. I mean, it is just insane. Waller's had 26 targets in 2 games for 15 receptions, 170 yards, and 1 TD. When TJ Watt was in the game, the Steelers were doing everything in their power to shut down Waller. I think it was working, and then obviously TJ went off with a groin injury, and 9 targets. I think it was like 60 yards for Waller, but this guy's an absolute wrecking crew. Another guy that
Oh,
I think might be legit. Brian Edwards, man, 8 targets, 7 receptions for 121 yards, 2 TDs called back. Those 2 TDs called back, that's a completely different stat line. So I'm with
exactly.
you. I think that the Raiders are absolute pretenders. I know it's going to break some of my family's heart that are Razor fans, but they need a dose of reality. Let's switch it over to
Mhm.
the undefeated teams in the NFC West. Going to kick it off with the San Francisco 49ers wins against the Lions 41-33. That crazy attempted comeback by the Lions. And then they really gutted one out versus the Eagles 17-11. 49ers, contenders or pretenders?
No, they are contenders. Even if I was on the fence with them, their schedule lines up so nicely to just be like they could be a pretender until they get their shit figured out and turn into contenders because their schedule allows for it near the end. And if they play their cards right, I've got faith, man. There's so much talent on this team. Like, you stop one, they've got two others coming at you. It's gonna be very hard. And the defense is playing well, man.
They are there, and they're gutty. This is a very gutty team. Let's
Mhm.
pull Kittle out of some blocking schemes and get him open. Let's see the
Yeah.
magic that Kittle can do. I will talk about a fantasy contender. Debo Samuel has
Woo!
been
My boy
absolutely unlocked
Debo.
for 2 weeks. 20 targets, 15 receptions, 282 yards, and a
Ugh.
TD. I don't need to tell you that the pretenders on this team are all of the San Francisco running backs, but I will say get Jeff Wilson on your IR spot. He will be coming back in 5 weeks. Going over to the
Yes, sir.
Rams, 34-14 versus the Bears, 27-24 in what was a closer matchup than was anticipated for the Colts. Contenders or pretenders for you, Smoke?
Contenders. Who am I even kidding here? And you know what? They haven't even unlocked their best weapon yet in Robert Woods. So, like,
Yeah.
once that happens, whoo, like
Yeah,
you
this
haven't even
is
seen all the dimensions of this offense yet. Like
yeah,
this Stafford is turning out to be such a great move and a great
yeah.
fit in this system.
And Sean McVay is absolutely loving his starters. Most of their starters seeing over 90% of the snap share. What's really interesting, I have to throw it out to Cooper Kupp, who looks like a fantasy contender right now. 21 targets, 16 receptions, 271 yards, and 3 TDs. He's absolutely lighting it up. We talked about Darrell Henderson earlier. His stat line so far healthy. He's out right now with sore ribs, 29 attempts, 123 yards. He's got 6 targets for 4 receptions and 46 yards on that receiving work and 2 touchdowns on the ground. It'll be interesting. Keep your eye on Michelle because he should, if Henderson out, get that work. Also keep an eye on Jake Funk, who did see some snaps with Hendo out and looked pretty damn good. Let's go over to the Cardinals now. 38-13 versus the Titans. 34-33 versus the Vikings. Contenders or pretenders with the Arizona Cardinals?
I'm gonna be real quick with this. Preseason, my rankings had Kyler Murray #1 QB. It had DeAndre Hopkins #1 wide receiver. I am a believer in this team. They are
Yeah.
contenders, and if they can
Yeah.
keep playing at this level, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm absolutely in on these guys.
I think we can easily say that these are contenders. And also from last season, a carryover for the jet sweep show was we were really high on this defense. They're very, very aggressive.
Yep.
They've added a couple extra pieces. They continue to be aggressive and are a force on the defensive side of the ball as well. So keep them rostered for sure. They're going to be in a lot of high scoring games. And what you want from your defenses in fantasy is that high scoring allure. So there's going to be turnovers. Kyler Murray's been absolutely lights out, 68 attempts, 50 completions, 689 yards for 7 touchdowns. And then also on the ground, 51 rushing yards, 2 TDs. Who needs Chase Edmonds? Who needs James Conner when you've got Kyler Murray? And bringing us over to the NFC South, we got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 31-29 versus the Cowboys, 48-25 versus the Falcons. I don't think we need to answer this, but pretenders are contenders for you.
Contenders.
Contenders,
or should we say defenders?
Yeah, defenders, contenders, whatever you want to call it. The best team in the NFL right here.
Yeah.
Chris Godwin, Rob Gronkowski, are they fantasy contenders or pretenders for you?
They're contenders, man. How weird is that to say? Like Gronk is balling out.
Gronk's efficiency. What only thing that concerns me is Gronk's efficiency. I mean, what he's done, he's got 4 TDs on 13 targets. He's got 12 receptions for 129 yards. I am liking the Chris Godwin volume that he's seeing. That it looks very, very appetizing for fantasy purposes. So definitely contenders all around there. Mm-hmm. Carolina Panthers, this is probably the most interesting one. 19-4 versus the Jets, 26-7 versus the Saints. Contenders or pretenders for you?
Oh, they're pretenders for me. Their defense is playing far beyond its capability right now. Like they're one of the top defenses in the league right now if you're looking stats wise against everything. I don't believe not yet. There's great pieces there, don't get me wrong. Maybe they could be next year. I do not see it. I believe they're complete pretenders.
Yeah, I think that they're top heavy with Burns and Horn, certainly really interesting. And you look at their schedule so far against the Jets and the Saints, pretty weak schedule there. One fantasy contender, though, I got to give it out to DJ Moore, 17 for 19, 159 yards, 1 TD, and also 14 rushing yards. So maybe he's going to get some of that CSAM work. And then a little bit of a pretender for me and a guy that I've loved for a long time is Robbie Anderson. He's just not seeing that volume. So be very wary of Robbie Anderson in this offense going forward. So that wraps up our pretenders and contenders, both for for NFL purposes and also for your fantasy football rosters. Smokey, and now just to dial it down a notch and get into the sometimes gloominess it can be, injuries in the NFL, the QB apocalypse.
Okay, so we're going to run through these real quick. I know the game is back on now. So first up, we got Tua Tagovailoa. Initial reaction to the play that I saw was Tua clutching his ribs, and it came out about 7 minutes later from Schefter that it was indeed a rib injury. I'm not a doctor, but just saying, Initial X-rays proved negative, which is encouraging. Now we just await results from the subsequent MRIs for any cartilage damage. Currently, the team is considering Tua's injury day to day, and it is a bit more of a matter of pain tolerance whether he will be good to play or not for Week 3. Tyrod Taylor left the game after a great start with a hamstring injury. Because of the Texans' short week, they're going to be playing on the Thursday nighter. He's been ruled out for that while he waits further results from MRIs. It's looking likely to be a multiple week injury, and the Texans are contemplating putting him on the IR, which would just be a 3-week turnaround. Baker Mayfield, after throwing an interception, Baker injured his left shoulder attempting a tackle to stymie the turnover. He briefly came out, but returned and finished the game. So we'll just keep an eye on the practice reports this week to see if there's any lingering soreness. Thankfully, it's his non-throwing arm for anyone who is rostering him. Andy Dalton, yeah, I guess we'll talk about him, also left the game early with a knee injury. Nagy has stated that they don't believe it's his ACL, and tests today confirmed that it was neither an ACL tear nor MCL damage. So good for Andy Dalton. The early diagnosis is a bone bruise, and if that holds true, well, so much for Bears fans wanting to witness the early ascension of Fields. He'll just get picked apart this week, and then it'll be Fields time. Last but not least, we have Carson Wentz. Lasted almost the full game without hurting himself, but finally succumbed to a bad rolled ankle, which actually turned out to be 2 bad rolled ankles. If he can escape the high ankle sprain, we all know about that, he could be back sooner or later, but at the minimum, it is 2 ankle sprains right now. His status for Week 3 against the Titans is still up in the air, and that's a juicy matchup, so we're hoping that he's going to be available for that. How is this affecting teams real quick here, Will?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a couple names that in terms, if you're needy of quarterback, Taylor Heineke's got to be a guy that you've got to get dialed into. He has that Konami code ability, and he's an absolute gunslinger, Mr. No Check Down, Washington football team's quarterback. So make sure that you check him out. In terms of the rest of the injuries out there, really the only one that has an incumbent that's going to step in that could be interested is Davis Mills for the Texans. That Stanford quarterback that is known for his arm, definitely something to monitor. And then really comes down to, if Tua is seriously banged up, if Wentz is seriously banged up, what does that look like? Does a name like Deshaun Watson become relevant for those teams? It very well could be, because I believe that both of those teams think that they're contenders. So keep an eye out. Names to really go out there and look at if you're adding is Heineke. Names to watch, Mills, and of course Watson long term.
Absolutely. All right. Well, that's what the people need to know right there. That was a crazy. It felt like that all happened with a span of like 10 minutes, and my phone was just blowing up from Schefter reports. I'm like, what the good God is going on? So I left the house.
Yeah, absolutely.
I straight up left my house.
Yeah, and I believe that they were all on the early slate too, right? I could be wrong. I think that they all were. So the next segment here, we're going to get you. We broke our promise, but we'll promise to get this dialed in. Is Puff Puff Pass. This is our waiver adds and drops. So two players that were taking a puff from, and then one that we're going to pass on. So Smokey, you're going to do the honors on the Puff Puff this week.
All right, so the 2 players that I am puffing on this week, first up is Zach Pascal. He's 36% rostered on Sleeper right now. The wide receiver 8 in red zone targets, 2 for 2 with 2 tutties out of that. The wide receiver 18 overall in PPR fantasy points over names like Jamar Chase, Deontay Johnson, Keenan Allen, Justin Jefferson, Stephon Diggs, Mike Evans, Calvin Ridley, Julio Jones, Devontae Smith, like so on and so forth. Facing the Titans defense next week, which is out to a paltry start, as I mentioned. They're allowing the most passing yards to opposing wide receivers. So if Carson Wentz is playing that game, man, pick yourself up some Zach Pascal. He could fill some of those Swiss cheese holes that are likely in your lineups now as a good flex play. Second guy I'm puffing on this week is Cordarrelle Patterson. 16% rostered on Sleeper. That's it. Running back 8 overall in PPR fantasy points. I mean, depending on what eligibility you are viewing him under, because on the platforms that I'm on, he's dual position eligibility, and that's pretty sweet. And he's getting a good amount of touches and passes out of an ambiguous Atlanta backfield. Like he was doing better than Mike Davis yesterday. Sorry. And he's going up against the Giants this week, who are allowing the 11th most rushing yards so far, as well as the 11th most receptions and the 8th most receiving yards to the running back position. So that's a juicy matchup for a guy that might be getting some good run out of there. So, puffing on them boys this week. Will, who we passing on?
Yeah, this is a really easy one for me. Just the confidence that John Gruden had in announcing Peyton Barber, the step in for Josh Jacobs, was pretty funny to see. And also, that rush to the waiver wire to add Peyton Barber, who's rostered in 49% of sleeper leagues right now, is quite shocking. He did get some volume. What is concerning there is on those 13 touches, he only managed about 2.4 yards a carry against the Steelers defense that was banged up. They're up against the Miami Dolphins this week. Again, if anybody, I like to go with Kenyon Drake, the running back of choice there. He looked a little bit more spry. I imagine that this is going to be a tough game, and that Carr will be using Drake in the passing game a lot more than Barber. So I would cut Barber out. I would cut Barber. Jacobs does look like he's going to be out, but still, Barber's not worth a roster spot. I'd rather take a shot on Cordarrelle Patterson with that dual eligibility. And then if you need wide receiver, Zach Pascal is just like that steady Eddie, man. Let's get him in your rosters. Get Peyton Barber out of there. Don't trust Chucky. And that is your puff pass for this week. We want to thank you for flying with the Jet Sweep Show for week 2 here. We'll be coming back at you live at halftime next Monday Night Football. Smokey, it's been an absolute pleasure, brother. Thanks for flying with the Jet Sweep Show tonight. Enjoy the rest of Monday Night Football, and let's hope that we've got an exciting second half.
That's right. Take care, folks. Happy football! Hope your teams did good. Thank you for tuning in to the Jet Sweep Show. You can follow Will at It's Harris Time, Smokey at Smokey LNFL, and the show at Jet Sweep Show. You can find the podcast on Apple Music, Spotify, YouTube, and anywhere else you can find podcasts. Don't forget to subscribe. We'll see you next week.